Starwalker Studios presents Game Master's Journey, a podcast all about tabletop role-playing games from the perspective of the captain's chair. In the Season 3 finale episode, I revisit some topics from the season with your feedback, including Elegance in RPGs, 13th Age, and the Star Wars dice system. So join me on the journey. Together, we can become game masters truly worthy of the title. Hello, listener. Greetings, fellow GM and or player. Welcome to episode 53 of Game Master's Journey, your multi-dimensional RPG podcast. I'm your host, Lex Starwalker, and I've got a great show for you today. This is the finale episode for Season 3, and I have a lot to cover today. I don't know how this is going to pan out. I may end up with a really long episode. I may end up with a double episode. I don't know. We'll see. You probably already know, though, because if it's a double episode, this is probably going to say part one or something in the title. But I'm going to try to get it done in one episode. All right. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some feedback that I've gotten on some of the topics I covered this season of the show. And I've been collecting this feedback for a while. As you know, I've had quite a few interview episodes, which have been great. But now it's time to reopen some topics. And I think this is a great way to close out Season 3. So first up, I got a message from Saul Morales on Google+, who said, "Hey Lex, I've had to catch up on some of your podcasts. Damn, real life keeps getting in the way. Don't I know it? And I am lucky you recently covered building your own world. I've been toying around with the idea for a long time. I've run a 10-year 3.0/Pathfinder campaign set in the Forgotten Realms, and I loved it. But I really wanted the players to be invested in the world, and I've jumped in with D&D 5th edition, and the ideas that the players are coming up with are amazing. Just like when a player comes up with a solution in a game that I never considered and realize that is a much better story than I had originally come up with. It has been good listening to your advice, and thanks for the shove in the right direction. Keep up the good work. I have been listening to your podcast since your second podcast. Glad you left the Numenera-centric podcast. I think you have much more to offer than topics on one game system, if I could talk. So thank you very much for that, Saul. That's awesome that you're building your own world. And I have heard from a few people that are digging the world building stuff. So I will definitely have to return to that topic in the future. The main reason I haven't done a world building episode recently, well, part of it's just I've had all these interviews, and part of it I was just being busy with the move. But the other thing is I haven't really been working a whole lot on my world lately. I've been busy with other things, and I've been running some Star Wars, and actually my Tyranny of Dragons group has decided to put Tyranny of Dragons on the shelf for a while. We'll probably come back to it. Right now the plans are to come back to it, but we're going to play Edge of the Empire for a while. I don't think we're so much burned out on D&D 5th edition as we're just burned out on that campaign. And I've really learned a lot about myself personally when it comes to running published campaigns or adventure paths that I will probably talk about in a future episode, because it's been very enlightening to me, and I have a feeling that there will be other people in the same boat who are listening who might benefit from my experience before you get involved in something that you end up, if not regretting, wishing that you didn't have to finish and you could do something else. Also, at this point, I want to let you know that I have a poll going on the Google Plus community regarding the length of the episodes of this show. So I've been shooting for 30-minute episodes, and ironically, when I went and looked at the episodes, the most common length for the show up to this point is 41 minutes, which I find hilarious. How many episodes were exactly 41 minutes long? So I guess I just talk 11 minutes too much in every episode. And I've heard from a lot of people that really like the 30-minute format, but I've also heard from some people who would like a longer length show. So I put up a poll. Please go to the show notes at starwalkerstudios.com. I'll have a link to the poll, or if you're part of the Google Plus community already for Game Master's Journey, just head on over there and you'll find it. Basically, the choices are 30-minute episodes, 45-minute episodes, or 60-minute episodes. And then I have two other choices at the bottom, which would be having either 30 or 45-minute episodes, but then allowing the interview episodes to be longer than that. Because what's been happening is, I'm sure you know, is I end up having to split interviews into three or two episodes. That was a weird way to say that, two or three episodes. So, there's good and bad with that. So one possibility would be to keep the show at 30 or 45 minutes, but allow those episodes to go longer. So let me know what you think. And I will definitely take the votes into consideration going into season 4. Which reminds me, a few episodes ago, I kept talking about season 5 of the show and how I was going to start talking about some GM products in season 5, and I meant season 4. I was all screwed up. I don't know what was going on. So yeah, please visit the poll. I have it linked in the show notes. Let me know. This is your chance to have your voice be heard, and I'm not saying necessarily majority will win, but I will definitely take it under advisement. And if a majority of people want a specific thing, then that will definitely increase the likelihood that that's what I'll end up doing. All right, so I think we'll talk a little bit about 13th Age. This is mainly your feedback because I don't have a whole lot to say on 13th Age. I've read the book, but I've never actually played it. I gave some of my opinions on the system from reading it in the Elegance in RPGs episode. I got an email from Alex Karnowski, who had some thoughts on 13th Age. Hi, Lex. Just like to thank you for your fantastic Game Master Journey podcasts. Just recently, when I was listening to some other RPG-related podcasts, I realized again how well produced your podcast is. Well, thank you, Alex. In contrast to many other RPG podcasts, you are not just droning on about how fantastic one system is, or how your XYZ was so cool, how he killed YXZ. No, you have been giving me some inspirations for many sessions. I had a Numenera campaign running, and I am currently mastering my own Kingmaker twist with the 13th Age system. Wow, that sounds really cool. I ran part of Kingmaker, about the first book's worth of it, and that's a pretty cool concept for a campaign. I tried to give you a review on iTunes, but I hate iTunes. So do I, Alex. So do I. I could do a whole episode on how much I hate iTunes. But I hate iTunes with a vengeance and have not installed it on any of my computers. And please don't install it on your computer. Can you give reviews through the iTunes website? Unfortunately, you can't, but that's okay. Anyway, I added a review on Stitcher, but I am happy to add one somewhere else. So no, you can't, unfortunately, review on the iTunes website. However, a review on Stitcher is great too. There are lots of people that use Stitcher. And, if you don't use iTunes, no worries. That's fine. I myself hate iTunes, and the only reason I even have iTunes on my computer is so that I can check the reviews and see how the show is doing and make sure that everything's kosher in iTunes, because you'd be amazed how many or how often things break in iTunes. And just about every time I run it, it crashes, which it's the only computer or the only program I use that crashes like that. But there you go. I have some comments as to your Elegance in roleplay systems. I bought 13th Age because of your podcast in the past. Hey, there you go. I should be getting a kickback for this. It's definitely an improvement to 3.5 D&D and probably to Pathfinder, although I've never GM'd Pathfinder. I enjoy many of the role-playing ideas like icon relationships. However, one of my main criticisms is that it is primarily geared to dungeon crawling. Furthermore, since some opponents have high hit points, it may take a while until the players have cleared the field. The escalation die helps to alleviate this problem to a certain extent. Nevertheless, my players are enjoying themselves, and with the right Roll20 character sheet, most roles are taken care of. Keep on podcasting and get settled into your new home. Cheers from down under. Awesome. So another international listener. Thank you so much for your email, Alex. I apologize it took me so long to get to it. I did reply to Alex, but it took me forever to get to it on the show. So yeah, so there's some more thoughts from someone on 13th Age, someone who's actually running it. And, ultimately what matters is that you're having fun and that the game system that you're using allows you to do the things that you want to do. I mean, that's all that really matters, and a lot of this of, I prefer 13th Age, or I prefer 5th edition, or I prefer Pathfinder is just, personal preference, personal opinion. We all look for different things from RPGs. We all have a different sweet spot as far as mechanics and crunch versus not crunch and things like that. So, 13th Age isn't really my cup of tea. For the reasons I said in those previous episodes, but that doesn't mean that it's not an awesome game and that it might not be the perfect game for you. So I just try to present things and let you make your own decisions as to, what you think about it. I also got a comment on the website from John Marvin, a longtime friend of myself and the show, who had some comments as well. He said he's going to disagree on 13th Age. So John's a big fan of 13th Age. But I see your points. As you said, everyone has their own sweet spot. After GMing 5th edition and 13th Age, I find 13th Age less complex, faster to run, and it produces epic, over-the-top fantasy without much effort on the GM's part. So there you go. That's what John has to say about it. So, if you're looking for epic, over-the-top fantasy, then 13th Age might be what you're looking for. Yes, you have to add your level to almost every roll, but you don't do that on the fly. You do that on your character sheet every time you level. +1 isn't hard. Yeah, that's true, but I remember from my Pathfinder and 3rd edition days that even though you have your bonuses totaled, doesn't mean that you're not every roll totaling them again just to make sure you didn't miss something. You need that one more +1 to hit the thing. This is a longer comment that I'm going to truncate a bit, but John mentions that there are some classes in the game that are more streamlined and are simpler to play for new players, which is really cool. And then there are more complex classes. So the thing I wondered about that is, what about if you're a new GM to the system? Are you just going to not allow the more complex classes and just say, hey, these are the simple classes that you can play until I know what I'm doing here? I guess that could be one way you do it. John goes on to say the streamlined classes are great for newbies and those who just want to hit things without learning a bunch of rules. The barbarian is simpler than any Numenera character and kicks butt in combat. Wow, that must be crazy simple. The crunchy classes are perfect for longtime gamers. My rogue never fails to find the most unique way to solve problems. A big time saver for me as a GM is how easy and fun monster special abilities are. In 5th edition, I can forget to use them until after the fight. In 13th Age, my roll to hit will proc a special ability or not. I love this. Better yet, 13th Age monsters come with big backstories and flavorful advice on how to use them. By default, you end up running interesting encounters rather than just another stat block. Okay, so unfortunately I have to take a little issue with some of what John's saying here. I've heard this argument from other people as well, that 13th Age monsters are easier to run because certain abilities will proc on certain die rolls, but I just don't see that. Remembering that a 5th edition monster has a special ability to me doesn't seem any harder or easier than remembering that a 13th Age monster has a special ability that happens on a certain trigger roll. Either way, you've got to remember that there's a special ability that you need to be concerned with. And, if you're running 13th Age and you're not paying any attention to the special abilities and what numbers they proc on, then you're going to forget about it, probably. Just like you would in 5th edition or any other game where you're not paying attention to that. I do think that 13th Age probably makes it easier for the GM to decide when to use a particular ability, because basically you don't have to decide, the dice will tell you. But I really don't see that it would be any easier to remember. And personally, I'd rather use tactics and role-playing the monster to decide when it's going to use an ability or not, as opposed to just leaving it up to a random dice roll. But that's just me. John recommends to check out the red cap from the bestiary, and I will have that in the show notes if you want to go check that out. He's got some cool abilities that trigger on different dice rolls. John also says classes are fun to play at first level. In my opinion, 5th edition took a step back to the battle days when casters run out of useful spells until they level enough to have too many to figure out. Low-level 13th Age casters can keep going without having to nag the rest of the party for an 8-hour rest. I'm a little confused by this. I don't know exactly how spells work in 13th Age, but in 5th edition, you can cast your cantrips until the cows come home. You can cast those infinite times per day, and that's a basic magical attack or thing that you can do. I mean, you have multiple cantrips. And if it's a damage cantrip, it scales. The damage scales as you level. Also, there are things like wizards can recover some of their spell slots with a short rest, which is just an hour with the standard rules. And sorcerers have sorcery points that they can use and recover. So I don't agree with that. In playing and running 5th edition, I haven't really seen any issue of people running out of spells or not being able to do anything because there's a spellcaster and needing to take a long rest. Usually when people need a long rest, it's everybody in the party needs to either heal or get some hit dice back, or they have various special abilities that they've used and they need to get back. It's not just the casters. In fact, in 5th edition, I think almost every class has some kind of special ability that they get back with either a short rest or a long rest. John says, high-level 13th Age casters have a manageable number of very cool spells, not an ever-growing list. So, this is one of those different strokes for different folks kind of things. So that could be a plus for you. Personally, I like having a huge list of spells as a high-level wizard. That's why I would play a wizard. I like having lots of specialized tools in my toolbox and deciding how and when to use those and which tool to use for which is why the wizard is my favorite class in D&D to play. It always has been. Having a few one-size-fits-all tools wouldn't be as fun for me. Having like 5 really awesome spells, I mean, that's cool, but I'd much rather have more spells that are more specialized. So there you go, folks. A lot of this, again, just simply boils down to preference, opinion, experience, because, any system you have a lot of experience with is going to tend to be easier to run than one that you don't have as much experience with. But some different viewpoints there on 13th Age. And I think both of these guys are making really good points. And I think this is a great illustration of how, you really have to decide for yourself. Don't listen to me or John or Alex or anyone else and say, well, Lex said this game, he doesn't like it, so this game sucks and I'm not going to even think about it. Because a lot of this is just personal preference, what you like, what works for you. Some of it's just how your brain works. Like some people find the Star Wars system really confusing. And for me, it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of it's just kind of how your brain organizes things. And something that makes a lot of sense to one person could be complete gibberish to something else. So, make your own decisions and just explore, try new things. You never know when you might find your next new favorite game. I have a few people that I want to thank for leaving excellent reviews on iTunes. And if you're one of these people and you have left this review a long time ago, I apologize. These are all reviews from other countries, and a listener, Justin Lowmaster, clued me in on how I can see these. So thank you very much, Justin, for letting me know about that. However, in order to do it, I have to select specifically the country I want to see reviews from. So I went through some countries that I know I have listeners in, and I found a few reviews. So if you are outside the United States and you leave a review, please let me know, and let me know what country you're in so I can go find it and check it out. So first off, I want to thank Craig E416 from Canada for your 5-star review on iTunes. And Craig says, really great stuff. I've been listening to Lex since the GM Intrusion days and really think the more open and general format is perfect, allowing him to look at different games and resources that can make us all better behind the screen. So thank you, Craig. And I think I know who Craig is. I think Craig's one of my Obsidian Monolith players. So thanks, Craig. Awesome stuff. I also want to thank Tudor Morgs from Australia. Very awesome review, quality across the board. As a seasoned board and PC gamer, I was looking for a way to explore my newfound interest in tabletop RPGs. Game Master's Journey has been a fantastic source of ideas and discussion. Lex talks passionately about a broad range of topics. Adventure design, spicing up combat encounters, collective storytelling, all are given equal airtime. Whilst these discussions have a largely GM focus, they explore issues relevant to all gamers, players, or GMs. I especially appreciate his willingness to investigate a diverse range of RPG systems. There are insights here for all RPG geeks, be they heavy combat crunch fans or diceless RP purists. If you're looking for a podcast to improve your GMing, then you should be listening to Lex right now instead of reading this review. No, seriously, go subscribe right now. If you're a player and want to delve deeper into the possibilities of role-playing or take a look at the hobby from a different perspective, then I cannot recommend this podcast highly enough. Great work, Lex. I started at the start and have listened all the way through. Looking forward to episode 50. So thank you, Tudor Morgs. Awesome review. And finally, I want to thank Jeremy Gray from New Zealand. Hello, New Zealand. This is a great resource for anyone wanting to be a better GM. It's pretty system agnostic advice in the main and an engaging host. Thank you, Jeremy. That's awesome. I love getting reviews and feedback from people in other countries. That's one of the awesome things about podcasts is you can talk to people all over the world. So cool. All right, so now I have a few discussions on the Star Wars RPG dice system. First of all, I got an email from Jeremy Gipton, and I just remembered Jeremy told me how to say his name, and I don't have that in front of me. So I hope I internalized it and I'm saying it right. But Jeremy says, shorter, more concise programs are nice. So he's talking about the show length here, with the latter trait being crucial. So more concise, and I agree. Being concise is very important. Too many podcasters ramble, and I've tried out a lot that I've not gotten beyond one or part of one episode before shaking my head over what comes across as self-indulgence. I know exactly what you mean, Jeremy. I'm not a big fan of profanity either, having tried to expunge it from my vocabulary over the years, but I'm not overly put off by it if it's sparing and fitting for the situation. Yours fits. Others seem to make a point of dropping F-bombs or being vulgar. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I used to swear like a sailor, and then I kind of had my eyes opened by a college professor of mine who said that the reason you shouldn't swear is not for any, hoity-toity, like, that's bad, that's wrong. It's just that it makes you sound unintelligent. And again, it's a thing of degree, right? If once in a while you drop a swear word, it's a punctuation. It's, you're making a point or you're adding emphasis to something. But if every other word is an F-bomb, you just sound like a fucking idiot. See what I did there? So I really kind of took that to heart and started trying to, because at that point I was pretty bad. But, I mark explicit on all my episodes, partly because I don't want to have to worry about censoring myself or any guest I have on the show. I want to be able to say whatever the hell I want to say. And partly because this show is not for children. I don't want people under the age of, 18 or so, or I don't know. the point where you can be considered intellectually adult, whatever that is for you. Everybody's different, right? But I don't want people younger than that listening to this show. This show isn't for them. This show is for adults. So, and I don't want people listening to this show with their little kids in the room and then sending me hate mail because I said something they didn't want their kids to hear. It's like, this is marked explicit to avoid that kind of stuff. So, if you're listening to this with your little kids and they hear something they shouldn't hear, it's on you because it's marked explicit, right? It'd be like watching an R movie in front of your kids and getting mad because they swore, right? And the other thing is I've been told by people, of course there's no data to back this up, but I've been told by people that their opinion is that a show marked explicit will get less viewers or listeners, I should say, just, not counting children or whatever, just because some people don't want to listen to something explicit. And honestly, if you're the type of person that's going to stop you from trying something out, then I probably don't want you listening to my show anyway, because you're just going to be complaining about everything I say. I'm just going to be offending you every episode. So it's better for both of us that you just avoid it altogether, right? So I dig the explicit tag, even though most of my episodes probably don't technically earn it. I once thought about trying to mark each individual episode explicit or not, but then I have to worry about when I'm editing, like what words did I say and how many times did I say them? And again, it's like censorship, and I don't even want to have to worry about that. And it's just easier for you to know that this show's explicit and not have to worry episode by episode. Oh, can I listen to this one on my speakers at work, or can I listen to this one in front of my little kid? This way you just know that, yeah, probably I shouldn't. All right, back to the email. Jeremy says, finally, Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars. I played the beginner rules and loved them, then bought the full book and got nutty and picked up some other books before realizing just how crunchy the system can be and frankly, how sucky the Starship combat rules are. I'd like to hear your comments on that part of the system at some point in the future. I'll do my best, but I'm frankly mystified by why you think the space combat sucks. So I'd love more specifics, like what exactly you don't like about it. I definitely agree the system can be very crunchy, and I've talked about this quite a few times on the show, how it can really bog down the pacing of the game, and it's just something you have to manage as a GM and as a group. But as far as the space combat, I love it. I have seen other people online say they don't like the space combat, or they think it's too complicated or it's too hard to figure out. So I was kind of prepared for that when I started running the game. I was expecting it to be really difficult. So I, made sure I understood it before I ran the game. But I didn't find it hard to run at all. When Kevin and Evan were on the show, they gave some great advice regarding space combat and just the system in general, which is namely to have printouts for your players at the table of the various actions and maneuvers that they can do in space combat. So there are certain maneuvers that you can do, and it's just for space combat. There are certain actions you can do. There are some that the pilot has to do. There are some that anybody can do. And so that's what I did. And I started a new group in Edge of the Empire. And at least one or two of the players have not played the game or the system before. And I had a space combat in the very first session. And that's what I did. I had I printed out some of the tables from the book as far as starship actions, starship maneuvers, additional starship actions. I even printed out the critical table, which we didn't need. But just having a few copies of those that the players can look at was a big help. Personally, I think that the space combat is a lot of fun. So much so that in my campaign I'm running, I'm making it a big focus of the campaign. And I told the players in session 0 that a big part of the campaign was going to be their role on the ship and them smuggling things and stuff like that. Lots of space battles and chases and stuff like that. So I told them, think about what your character's going to do on the ground and think about what you're going to do in space and build a character that can do something in both scenarios. Like I said, we had a space battle in the very first session. I love that unlike previous Star Wars systems I've played, like the various D21s and the West End games system, in space combat, every PC has something they can do. One player can fly the ship, one can make repairs, a couple can man the guns. Any other PCs that are there can do things like assist the pilot by plotting a course, angle deflector shields, assist in repairs, use electronic warfare against opposing ships by either slicing into their systems or jamming their sensors, or prepare for escape by plotting a hyperspace jump. I also like that it uses some skills that are used on the ground, like mechanics, computers, skills like that, and also other skills that are exclusive to space combat or space flight. Skills like pilot space, gunnery, skills like that. So this is really cool because it allows a player who's really focused on the space side of things to feel like they're rewarded for investing in that, and they have cool things that they can do because they focused on that aspect of the game, while at the same time another player who doesn't want to focus on the space side of things doesn't have to, and they can still be useful in a space combat using a skill like computers or mechanics that they use in other situations on the ship. And I think that's really cool. Now, one area I think that can cause problems in space combat in this system is that you're not given a lot of guidance, or really any guidance, on how to use the enemy ships. You're also not given a nice, easy stat block for space combat. So, if you're running a space combat in Star Wars, you have to look at not only the stat block for the ships that they're facing off against, but also for the crew members of the ship, right? If the ship's going to fire at the PCs, you need to not only know like the stats of the guns on the ship, but you also need to know the stats of the person manning the guns, right? So this necessitates some prep before the session, in which you decide what ships you're going to be used and what NPCs will crew those ships, come up with the dice pools that you're going to need for common roles, and kind of have that ready ahead of time, or at least that's how I do it. However, once you do this once or twice, I think it's going to become pretty easy because the NPCs in the game are really straightforward, and it's very easy to memorize the relevant stats of the various NPCs over time. So, once you use stormtroopers a few times, you're going to remember what their dice pool is to try to shoot someone with a blaster. Or once you use TIE fighters a few times, you're going to remember how many dice they have to make a piloting or a gunnery check, right? You're just going to remember. Also, I would advise not to forget to use your minion groups in space combat, not only for things like a bunch of TIE fighters chasing the PCs, which should be treated as one or more minion groups, but also do the same thing with big ships as well. So for instance, if they're fleeing from a Star Destroyer, make minion groups of the various turbo laser batteries and the gunners manning them. Don't, roll for each separately. Now, I do think that Fantasy Flight Games could have done a much better job of presenting the starships and including standard crew stats in the stat block for the starship to make space combat a lot easier to run so you don't have to do all this prep. They also could have done a much better job just formatting the ship stat blocks as well. For instance, when you get to the weapons section of any ship, it's just a mess. There's no formatting, there's no, it's just this block of text, and it can be very difficult in the middle of a session, in the middle of a combat on something like a Star Destroyer that's got all these different weapon systems to find the right one, because they don't do a good job of making that easy to navigate. Now, I can give a pretty good guess why they did it that way, to take up less space. But ultimately, I think as a game designer, you should be more concerned about making your game easy to run and fun to play than saving page counts. I mean, come on. But, these are all criticisms of the way the system is presented and not so much criticisms of the system itself. I think the system is really good. Unfortunately, they don't present it very well. So it takes a lot more work and effort on the GM's part to A, figure it out, and B, make it work well in game. Also, I found that the Fantasy Flight Star Wars system overall kind of results in this like Matrix time kind of thing where everything's in like super slow motion. You know, you see a space battle on the screen and it's fast paced, edge of your seat kind of thing. But in the game, each round can take many minutes, you know, as each person has to decide what they're going to do. They have to assemble their dice pool. They have to roll the dice pool. And then the group has to decide what that roll means and resolve it and then go on to the next person. So the pacing really suffers for that. And you're just going to have to like accept that's the way this game works. And then the GM has to deal with all the NPCs and do the same thing. Which can be a bit of a slog sometime if you don't just start faking it till you make it. So the pacing's pretty slow, and you definitely lose that adrenaline rush immediacy that you would have in an actual movie experience. But this is a problem with all RPGs, except maybe the really overly simplistic ones. I do think that there is still drama and tension in the game, in a space combat, in that we're really zeroing in on each roll, and so many things can happen with each roll. And if you have the entire table engaged in interpreting all the rolls, even the GM/NPC rolls, then I think it can be a lot of fun and people aren't going to get bored, and it's not going to bother you that it takes way too long to get through an encounter that maybe in real time took like 30 seconds. But overall, I really like the system. I really like how it works and how it's fairly simple and straightforward, but there's a lot of intricacy and complexity within it that you can work with as a player or a GM. I do think it's a little rough on the GM. If you're going to do a space battle, especially if it's going to involve more than one ship, or if it's going to involve like a capital ship that has a large crew where it can be doing a lot of actions in a given turn, you definitely want to take some time and be ready for that and make sure you got all your ducks in a row. But I can't think of a better way to do it without losing a lot of the nuance and without losing the ability for everybody to be able to do something meaningful, and without, you know, just stripping the system down to where it's an overly simplified like cipher system kind of thing where you're just rolling one die and you succeed or fail and that's about it. So, you know, again, you know, every system has pros and cons, and you got to find the one that works for you and your group. I also heard from Dan Marshall on Google Plus, who said, "Hey Lex, having just listened to episode 43 of Game Master's Journey, I have some fresh thoughts in my head concerning the episode, namely when it comes to Fantasy Flight's Star Wars RPG and the dice mechanics. The Star Wars system was my hook into tabletop role-playing. It was the game that finally managed to get me addicted to the hobby." Well, there you go. That's good to hear. Where other games over the years, such as Pathfinder, Shadowrun, and D&D 3.5, had failed to truly get me invested. It wasn't until trying Edge of the Empire several years later that I realized what was blatantly missing from these other games: a dice rolling mechanic that actively involves the players in the narration. And I agree. I'm a storyteller at heart, usually using games as a way of stepping into an interesting character and viewing the world through their eyes. I find little enjoyment in number crunching, stat min-maxing, or figuring out how to squeeze every last +1 I can from my character sheet. I completely agree with that too. I'd rather envision the scene around me and absorb the situation, enjoying the triumphs and travesties that come with it. Yeah, me too. Dice rolling in Pathfinder always seemed mundane and only managed to draw me out of the experience. I completely agree. Especially in combat. And I felt like 3.5 was like that too. It's like as soon as you got into combat, it just pulled you out of like this role-playing game and put you into this strategic miniatures game. Even if you didn't use miniatures, it's still the same thing. I was not a fan myself. Now, perhaps part of the blame can be put on the DM for not embellishing the roles with more narrative. Sure, we can always blame the DM. But regardless, the simple pass-fail structure of a skill check or combat check made it seem like we were just taking turns adding up numbers, seeing if we were actually able to swing our sword correctly or scale a wall in a heated moment. Yeah, I totally agree. Star Wars, on the other end of the spectrum, actually puts a physical story in the player's hands. When you can visibly see the difficulty of the check, it makes the situation far more daunting. Rolling a 2 difficulty to hack into a computer brings about a smug sense of satisfaction, seeing all of your training pay off in the form of a bunch of yellow dice. On the other hand, trying to tame a wild rancor with a 5 difficulty survival check actually feels mentally demeaning as you feel the weight of the purple dice in your hands. Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, there's definitely something to be said for that visual, tactile aspect where, the difficulty and what your odds are of succeeding at this roll are a visible physical thing that you're holding in your hands, and you can see and feel, how many good dice you've got compared to how many bad dice. And that is really cool. Setback dice and boost dice become satisfying to dish out as well. You failed at your roll, but managed to get a few advantages out of it. You decide to use it to assist your friend, which involves physically handing them a blue dice for their next roll. Sure, your check failed, but you still contributed to the team, and there is actual evidence of it right there in your friend's hands as they shake their dice together. Yeah, that's a good point. Setback can feel draining too. Let's say a sandstorm is going on during the battle, and you're forced to take a black die whenever you attempt to fire. Or that stormtrooper's blaster shot managed a glancing blow on your arm, making it more difficult to aim. Seeing the effects of the story physically manifest themselves into the dice pool not only helps drive the narrative, but it keeps players at the table invested in the action. How many times have you had players drift off during combat in RPGs? Far too many. Yeah, and you know what? That's a great metric for a system right there. If you're wondering about elegance of an RPG system or just how well it works for you, wait until you're in the middle of a heated combat and see, are your players engaged or are they drifting off? Are they looking at their phones? Are they in the other room playing Settlers of Catan? Like Kevin said, that's a great metric, because I know, when I was running D&D 3.5 or Pathfinder, a lot of times in the middle of a pitched battle, people were getting bored because it was just taking too long to get to their turn. And when it was someone else's turn, they were engaged. They had nothing to do with what was going on. Where at least, in the Star Wars game, you can help adjudicate these dice rolls, and it keeps you engaged. They use their turn to run up, swing their sword, and then retreat to their phones until it's their turn again. Yeah, exactly. This is mostly because there really isn't anything else to do. And unfortunately, a lot of players only really care about their own character. Yeah, and I don't think it's even so much that. It's just that there's nothing you can do. And, if you do say anything, you're speaking out of turn, you're infringing on someone else's turn. And it's like, who can stay engaged when it has nothing to do with you and you have no choices that you can make? Or, I don't think it's even so much that they don't care about the other character. It's just like, well, I can't do anything anyway until it's my turn. So, it's hard to stay interested. But using the Star Wars dice system, even the selfish player can see their assistance being used in a partner's role or help decide where that next boost should go. I've had even the most self-interested gamers fully attentive at the table thanks to a dice mechanic that keeps every roll fresh, always presenting the possibility of affecting them directly. Very cool. I know the point you had made about the system was that it isn't as elegant, at least in terms of speed and smoothness. To that, I will definitely agree. It takes some practice reading the symbols and canceling them out quickly. But a lot of D20 games, while snappy in their mechanics, failed to grasp me as a player because I just never felt that involved. I rolled a number and the DM told me whether or not that number was good enough. I never felt as though my character was actually scaling a wall or swinging a dagger. It just felt like I was rolling a die. What the Star Wars RPG system lacks in quick interpretation, it makes up for in a plump narrative that's always engaging everyone at the table. For me, I gladly give up some elegance for a feature like that. Thanks a lot for your great podcast. I love listening and have taken a lot of your advice to heart when it comes to becoming a better player, DM, storyteller, and world building. Cheers, Dan. So thank you, Dan. That is awesome email. And you make a lot of good points about the system. And, you're right. I agree with you in that I think that losing a little bit of speed and ease is definitely worth, getting that much more engagement from your players. Definitely worth it in my book. All right. So that wraps up the feedback for today. Got through a lot of it. I'm actually surprised I got so much done, but episode ran a little long, but what are you going to do? It's a season finale, right? So if you have any comments or anything to add to these discussions, you can shoot me an email at gamemastersjourney@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Looking forward to season 4. Going to open up some new topics for discussion, but that does not mean that we can't revisit old topics if someone has something interesting to add. Well, we're entering the home stretch for episode 53 of Game Master's Journey, the season 3 finale episode. 53 episodes of this role-playing goodness and more to come. I want to thank everyone who has sent me feedback and sent me comments and questions and everything like that. Really, really appreciate hearing from you. And if you would like to reach me, a great way to do so is by email. You can email me at gamemastersjourney@gmail.com. You can also find me on Google+, just search for Lex Starwalker, and you can find me on Twitter at Lex Starwalker. You can go check out the website, starwalkerstudios.com. There you can find the show notes for this and all the episodes with links to take you to various things I've talked about and give you more information. Also, at the top of the show notes, you can find the Patreon and donate buttons if you'd like to support the show. I really appreciate all the patrons, and I really appreciate everyone who gives donations. Definitely keeps the studio running. And also, you can find iTunes and Stitcher buttons if you'd like to go subscribe and or leave a review. But again, if you don't use iTunes or Stitcher, no worries. It's all good. Don't feel like you should go leave a review on something that you don't use. I'm definitely not asking you to do that. I don't expect anyone to do that. But if you do use them and you'd like to leave a review, it definitely helps out for other users of those platforms to find the show. And then at the bottom of the show notes, you'll find a link to the Google Plus community for Game Master's Journey, where we have RPG discussions and you can network with other gamers. And my YouTube and Twitch links are down at the bottom of the show notes as well. And finally, you will find a link to a free 30-day trial of Audible books, courtesy of Game Master's Journey, and my Amazon referral link. So if you're going to do some shopping on Amazon, please use my link to go over there, and then I'll get a little credit from Amazon for whatever you buy. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't tell me what you bought, so... If you want to go on Amazon and buy sex toys, it's fine. I won't know what you bought or even who you are. So no worries there. So I want to thank you very much for coming along with me on my voyage through the various RPGs that I'm exploring and the various worlds and systems that I'm exploring. It can get a little lonely on the Obsidian Monolith, so it's always great to have you along for the journey. And I hope that you will stay with the show and tune in for season 4. There's not going to be a break. We're going to go right into season 4 next week. So stay tuned for that. I hope that you have a chance to play your favorite RPG this week. And I hope that you give a new system a try. Try something new, right? You never know. Might find your new favorite game. I'll be back next week with another episode of Game Master's Journey, the beginning of season 4, and also look forward to new album art for season 4 and new art on the website and the Google Plus group that Nikki did for me, and it's awesome. I can't wait to show it to you. Until then, game on.
This has been a Starwalker Studios production, your source for quality gaming and hobby podcasts.
This episode's music provided by Cloudwalker, Renfield, Transboy, and Ish. Please see the show notes for more details at starwalkerstudios.com/GameMastersJourney.